Happy New Year, everybody. Good evening. The time is 6:02 p.m. and I would like to call to order the Board of Directors meeting for today, Wednesday, January 21st, 2026 to order. We are located at Avis headquarters at 1999 Harrison Street, Suite 2300 in Oakland, California, 94612 in the Altamont Conference Room. Members of the public wishing to make a comment via Zoom during an agenda item can do so by either using the raise hand function or *9 if you're joining through the telephone. Clerk, can you please take roll call?
Thank you. Thank you. Alameda County.
Present.
Albany. Berkeley. Berkeley. We'll come back to Berkeley.
Okay, hold on.
Present, sorry.
Thank you. Dublin. Emeryville. Fremont.
Present.
Hayward.
Present.
Lathrop. Livermore. Newark.
Present.
Oakland.
Present.
Pleasanton.
Present.
San Joaquin County.
Here.
Stockton.
Here.
Tracy. Union City.
Here.
Community Advisory Committee.
Present.
Thank you. San Leandro.
Present.
Piedmont.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Quorum has been established. We're now moving on to our second item, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me and stand if you are able. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. We are now moving on to public comment. Public comment is reserved for members of the public who wish to give a comment on a non-agenda item. Members of the public will have 2 minutes to give their comment. Clerk, are there members of the public wishing to make a comment this evening in the room on a non-agenda item?
Who are in the room? There are no members in the room with hands raised?
Okay, any members of the public online?
Yes. Jessica Tovar, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Hello, board members, Jessica Tovar, Local Clean Energy Alliance, People's Clean Power Alliance. I wanted to, just remind everybody, about a year ago this time, I had come back from visiting family and we had just experienced really horrible wildfires that pretty much decimated many communities. And that is not an isolated situation. Unfortunately, that pretty much set the stage for what we're looking at moving forward, which is why my organization is very dedicated to building community resilience, because we know that we are living in the time of the ravages of climate change and it's affecting our communities in different ways. And we are really needing to have resilience hubs to respond to the crises that we're currently facing. In addition, I have to acknowledge we've been living in horror the last year in terms of this administration. And I want to uplift the fact that the board did not move forward with contracting Deloitte, who currently holds contracts with ICE and the Department of Homeland Security. And so I really urge this agency to create a policy moving forward that doesn't use public funds to contract with folks who are in collaboration with this fascist regime that is going, to all lengths, including killing innocent people. And we should not be supporting that. So I want to thank you, and I'd like to see this agency move forward in building the good and fighting the bad. Clean power to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there no further hands raised this time?
Okay, and I'm going to just glance here at our members who are attending from remote locations. Please raise your hand now if there are any members of the public there wishing to make a public comment. And as we go forward this evening, if you could flag for me by raising your hand if there's any members of the public wanting to make a comment on any of the agenda items. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment, and we are now moving on to the consent agenda. There's 2 items on tonight's consent agenda. The approval of minutes as corrected from December 17th, 2025, as well as contracts entered into, also dated from, is that December?
January.
January. Okay, January of this year, January of 2026. So do we have any members of our board of directors who would like to pull an item from the consent agenda? Seeing no hands raised, we will proceed. Do we have any public comment, either in the room or online, for anything on the, oh wait, we're not going to do public comment because it's consent agenda. No, we do. Yeah, okay, sorry. I got myself confused there for a minute. Okay, any public comment on either items 4 or 5?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, closing public comment for the consent agenda. Any comments from any board members at this time? If there are no comments, we will entertain a motion.
So moved.
So moved by
Second.
Vice Chair
I'll
Gonzalez
second.
and seconded by Member Roche. May we please have a roll call vote?
Thank you very much. San Leandro. Aye. And Hayward.
Aye.
Alameda County.
Aye.
Albany. Berkeley.
Aye.
Dublin. Emeryville. Fremont.
Aye.
Hayward.
Well, I already
Oh,
voted,
sorry,
but
thank you. My
yeah.
apologies. Lathrop, Livermore. Newark,
Aye.
Oakland,
Aye.
Pleasanton. Aye. San Joaquin County.
Yes.
Stockton,
Yes.
Tracy, Union City,
Aye.
and Piedmont.
Aye.
The consent calendar is approved.
Wonderful. We are now moving on to regular agenda item number 6, which is our CEO report.
All right, I'll jump into that. Smattering of some updates. Starting off with a typical quick summary of our recent meetings. So we did have an executive committee meeting on Wednesday, January 14th. We reviewed one primary item. There was members received an update on the customer care and data management services procurement plan. That's a contract that we currently hold with SMUD to provide billing and data services and call center services. The next executive committee meeting will be on February, with the next regularly scheduled XCOM meetings on February 4th. I do anticipate that to be canceled, so that will happen imminently, as that is the day that will be up in Sacramento for some members of staff. Moving on to the financial, administrative, and procurement meeting. The next FAP meeting will be on Wednesday, January 28th, so that's 1 week from today. That will be at 3:30 p.m. in our offices. The Marketing, Regulatory, and Legislative Subcommittee meeting was canceled on December 19th. The next MRL meeting will be held on Friday, March 6th at 10 a.m. in our offices. Next update is related to the Community Advisory Committee. Our application is now open. So we are currently accepting applications for positions on the CAC. The CAC is made up of residents and business owners across AVA's service area who are appointed or reappointed by the board of directors. The CAC advises the board on AVA initiatives and provides a bridge between community stakeholders and the board. The deadline to apply is Friday, February 20th at 12 p.m. And interested community members can learn more and apply at the link that is provided in this memo. We look forward to seeing applications. We will work with ad hoc members of our board to provide nominations within the specific regions that are relevant for your member territory, of course. So as that process moves forward, we will lay out the timeline and the framework with which we'll work with you all to bring forward nominations to the board, and I'll ultimately, of course, have the board approve them. I also just want to note something that's not specifically on the CEO report tonight, but hot off the press, last night, the CAC elected a new chair and vice chair. So I wanted to welcome and thank and congratulate Mickey Souza for sitting in that role now. Appreciate your services. And obviously, tonight will be your first meeting with us formally in that capacity. So thank you so much. Moving on, I wanted to just briefly mention the AVA outreach strategy. That is something that our staff is working to continue to refine and update. And so we will be engaging with our board members and community advisory committee members on a survey to seek input on various aspects of our outreach strategy, outreach plans throughout 2026. There's always a lot of interest, I know, from board members and members of the community in terms of the events and ways that we engage with the public and our customers. So be on the lookout for that. More information to come. Next section is related to our community sponsorship recipients. So as the board is familiar with, 3 times a year, AVA awards sponsorships to community organizations across our service area. Funding areas include, but are not limited to, sports, art, music, and STEM. More information, eligibility criteria can be found online. There's a link provided there. The most recent round of recipients was just provided and notified over the course of the last month or so. So we provided a table and a list of all those great organizations that we are supporting and do great work within our communities. So thank you to all that they do, and congratulations on the funding. Lastly, I'll note grants ideation public community workshop. Staff provided an informational item to executive committee in December on AVA's grant strategy, and staff is hosting a public workshop to solicit grant ideas from interested community members. That ideation session and workshop will be held on Wednesday, January 28th. So that's next week from 5:30 to 7:30 in the evening at our Oakland office here. Community members, local nonprofits, partner organizations are all encouraged to participate, and there will be a remote option available as well. There's a link provided there for registration and more information. And that is it for the CEO report.
Great. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from members in the room? Seeing none, do we have any questions from our members attending by Zoom? Okay, seeing none, do we have any public comment either in the room, online, or at any of the remote locations?
There are no hands raised and stuff.
Okay, closing public comment, bringing this back. This is an informational item only. There's no action to be taken. So I'm going to go ahead and thank our CEO for the report. And we're going to move on now to agenda item number 7, which is our CAC report. And welcome, Chair Souza.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start off with thanking this committee, and I'd like to tell you about what happened last night. It was time to elect a new chair, and I was blessed enough to have this wonderful group of people from the AVA Advisory Committee nominate and choose me for their next chair, along with Vice Chair Indira Bachlison. Sorry about that. I believe that there were wonderful candidates besides me, and I will work very hard to pave the way for the next leader of the committee, who may be someone who you may know in our group, or a future potential member. And my goal for the year is to better understand and make progress on how the advisory committee can serve both the AVA staff and especially the board, as we all know that your time and energy is divided between this very important board and the cities that you serve. Most importantly, we want to be a focal point for the community and their needs, keeping an ear to the ground so that we are always on a continuous path of improvement and growth. During the meeting, we were joined by Jessica Tovar, who also gave us a notice about how she stressed that we cannot forget that our communities are already suffering from wildfires and issues related to climate change. And she thanked AVA for opposing corporations that are working for ICE. And I am reiterating that. And the committee was pleased with the added benefit of AI generated minutes, which we are now seeing. And note that some names are misspelled and other potential errors, but we agree that AVA's staff and the AI generated minutes are solely for the use of enhancing chair and administrative note-taking. And these minutes and the minutes given for staff were approved from our last meeting in December. And as far as the synopsis for the last board meeting, it was noted that the committee was disappointed in the reduction of the renewable investments and the removal of the on-bill credits. And I will reserve time for the two items for later in the meeting when they are mentioned. And as for the rest of the CSE meeting, we discussed streamlining the ad hoc committee communications using categories such as risks, community concerns, legislative, and opportunities. Although as chair, my knowledge is limited, we have on the committee people who have worked since the inception of AVA Community Energy, as well as in the sector of energy, legislative policy, advocacy, and have connections to organizational heavies such as the Sierra Club, UC Berkeley, who have very large legislative staffs, which we hope to connect. And I wanted to point out as an example that it would be prudent to join forces in the recently recent article about how San Diego CCA has sued for a review of the PCIA again. And perhaps that AVA Community Energy or some members, including the advisory committee, can help join forces to reverse the PCIA reform that was passed in the last year. So that's just an example of what maybe we can help with. So that's my report.
Great. Thank you so much for that report. Are there any questions from members in the room for our new CAC chair? Seeing none, do we have any questions from our members attending on Zoom? Seeing none, do we have any public comment either in the room, online, or at our remote locations?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay. Closed public comment. This was an informational item. So I just want to welcome and thank our new chair and our new vice chair. And thank you for your service and appreciate that you're here this evening with us. So we're moving on to regular agenda item number 8, which is an IRP overview. This is an informational item. And the presenter, I don't know, Howard, are you going to?
That will be Marie
introduce
Fontenot online.
Maureen
right there.
Fontenot online, our Senior Vice President of Power Resources. Welcome.
Time to hear this update today. As our chair mentioned, this is an informational item only. The purpose of this presentation is to give the board an overview of a work stream that staff has already begun working on, but that we will really be digging into in earnest in the coming weeks and months. And that we will be coming back to the board with to seek the board's approval of before we file our analysis with the Public Utilities Commission this summer. Next slide, please. Basically every other year in California, AVA has to participate in the California Public Utilities Commission's Integrated Resource Plan, IRP, compliance analysis, and related filing. An IRP historically you can think of it as a long-term roadmap. It details how an entity will meet its future energy demand reliably and affordably, and how it will balance supply side and demand side resources to meet that demand. This analysis considers the costs of meeting demand, environmental impacts of different generation sources, regulatory goals, et cetera. And it has historically, or let me say this, if you go back to the olden days, when these analyses were first being performed, they were historically performed by vertically integrated utilities. That's like PG&E in the 1980s, when PG&E owned the transmission wires, the distribution wires, they owned functionally all of the generation resources, and they sold electricity to customers. That's when PG&E was a vertically integrated utility. Although PG&E still owns the wires and owns a little bit of generation and still sells electricity to some customers, they are no longer a traditional vertically integrated utility. So back in the olden days, these vertically integrated utilities would do 20 and 30-year planning exercises, their IRPs, and they would map out what their forecasted energy demand was going out 20, 30 years into the future, what transmission lines they needed to build to meet the demand that was growing in their service territory, what additional power plants they needed to build and own and operate. And this whole analysis would be filed with the incumbent Public Utilities Commission and then basically blessed as a signal that the utility could start could go out and start to do that work. Now, there would still be the general rate cases, and there would have to be applications to build individual power plants or, and own and operate them, or to build transmission lines. But this was the analytical tool that justified these utility companies' requests to build, own, and operate these assets going into the future. But nowadays in California, the world is a bit different. The utilities are not vertically integrated. Nowadays, long-term transmission planning is under the purview of the California Independent System Operator, or CAISO. And then the resource planning is led by the Public Utilities Commission. So that's what supply resources will we use to meet demand. It's also worth noting that, nowadays it's not just 3 utility companies under the CPUC's purview. It's the 3 utilities, a handful of for-profit retail electricity companies, and dozens of CCAs. All of us have to work together and do our own IRPs and submit them to the Public Utilities Commission. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, this is a biennial, every other year analysis and filing that is required by the CPUC. All of the CPUC's jurisdictional load serving entities have to submit our long-term procurement plans to the Utilities Commission. The CPUC will mandate very prescriptive modeling assumptions that we will use to perform the analysis that we do. And I'll talk a little bit about that more in a few slides. AVA submitted compliant analyses in 2018, in 2020, in 2022, and in 2024, the CPUC delayed the IRP filing. So what we are doing now in 2026 functionally is the 2024 filing. We have no reason to believe that we'll be asked to do another one and hand it in November of 2026. The purpose of this is for the CPUC to be able to look across all of its jurisdictional load serving entities and evaluate if all of these load serving entities are planning to contract with resources that can meet state reliability as electric demand increases, and are we planning to contract with resources that will allow the state to meet its emissions reduction goals. The CPUC evaluates California's resource needs going out 10 years into the future. But like I said, this analysis will look 20 plus years into the future. And it is important to note that the compliance analyses that are filed can result in procurement mandates from the CPUC. That has happened in the past after, I believe, 2 of the 3 previous IRP compliance analyses. And we actually just had another one. I'll explain that in, I think, possibly the next slide. Next slide, please. The analytical benefits of doing this work. So because the CPUC gives us all rather prescriptive rules about what we have to assume when we perform our analyses, that it sort of hampers our ability to think creatively and go away from, stray from the CPUC's assumptions and look at what things that we think might happen. But by all of the CPUC's load serving entities working off of the same set of assumptions, the CPUC is able to look across its jurisdictional entities and make sure that since we are all using the same input assumptions, our results kind of fit together in a reasonable way. So for example, if the CPUC mandates that the state should assume that there's only 1,000 megawatts of new geothermal available in the entire state by 2030, and one entity is plan to procure 500 megawatts and another entity is planning to procure 700 megawatts, then the CPUC knows, okay, the appetite for this resource type is greater than what we think is actually going to be available. And so the CPUC knows that some additional work will need to be done. Conversely, if the CPUC wants to see more geothermal in California and no one is really planning to contract for it or interested in contracting for it based on the IRP analyses, that might drive a CPUC procurement order going forward. So as I mentioned, the input assumptions are based on the Public Utilities Commission's view of the market. They identify specific differences in respective market views. We are required to do a conforming portfolio analysis using very specific CPUC assumptions, and then we can submit another portfolio of resources where we have deviated from some of the CPUC assumptions a little bit, but our ability to stray from these required assumptions is limited in the compliance analysis. Another benefit of doing this analysis is that we can evaluate the costs and risks of different portfolios of generation resources that we might contract with in the future. We can also look at what are the benefits or challenges of emission reductions associated with different portfolios of resources, and how would these different portfolios of resources, how economical would they be, or how well would they respond to AVA's changing demography of our service territory over time based on different market conditions. For this IRP analysis, AVA is employing an open source software. We are doing this analysis entirely in-house for the first time. Doing this analysis in-house represents a huge step forward in our organizational technological capabilities. And as I've described, what we have to file with the CPUC for compliance purposes is very, very prescriptive. By bringing this software in-house and doing the work ourselves, we will now be able to do these types of analyses for our own internal understanding and for our own internal considerations, and to help decision-making on a more regular basis. It's not going to be a daily thing or a weekly thing, but this is the type of analysis that we will likely be doing on a quarterly basis. And you will probably start to see the outputs of some of these analyses, for example, in the lead up to the budget setting cycle. Maybe not this year because it doesn't really fit with the compliance timeline very well. But this is the type of analysis that will influence our budget setting and help us better anticipate risks in the market, in the coming budget cycle and a couple of budget cycles out. Next slide, please. So the deliverables. First, to the CPUC, we are required to hand in the analyses that we will perform that are based on the CPUC prescribed input assumptions. And if we make any changes in what is called the preferred portfolio, we will have to define what those changes are. We will also have to file a very prescriptive narrative document that describes the analysis we did, the process, the results, et cetera. all of these deliverables will be submitted to you, board, for your review before we can file it. And so I want to highlight the fact that the narrative document that we will be showing you is a very prescriptive format. It is not necessarily the way that I would want to convey this information to you if I was really seeking your understanding. We will be using a prescriptive format because we are required to meet the regulatory obligation. There are also 2 rather burdensome Excel workbooks that we will be completing and submitting to you and then the CPUC. The first is called the Resource Data Template. This workbook describes all of the different resources that are in the hypothetical portfolios that we will be analyzing and, sort of putting together for submission to the CPUC. The last is the Clean System Power Calculator. And this tool shows an estimate of what future GHG emissions will be associated with the different portfolios. So that's what we have to hand in to the CPUC. And as I said, deliverable number 1 for the AVA board, we have to show this to you before we can file it with the CPUC. So we will have to come back to you the month before the IRP analysis is due and present our results to you. We'll tell you about the process that we went through, and then we will have to get your approval to make the compliance filing to the CPUC. And so this will also help you understand the drivers of our portfolio costs. It'll help you understand some macro, very, very high level resource availability and what the CPUC thinks will be available in California into the future. And then it'll identify some potential risks to AVA's plan and trajectory to have a carbon-free portfolio by 2030. And eventually we would be able to use that risk identification to come up with mitigation plans. Next slide, please. This is the current timeline for the IRP proceeding. The thing that I really want to stress here, about halfway down the table, you'll see the IRP filing deadline is June 1st, 2026. This date was just updated this past Friday night after AVA had posted a different version of this timeline in the board materials. The due date was previously in May. It is possible that the due date will slip a little bit. And so we're working and anticipating a June 1st filing deadline. That would mean we'd come back to the board in May. But if the filing deadline slips to July, we'd probably come back to the board for approval in June. So there's just a little uncertainty on what the exact deadline will be. Next slide, please. The way that we do this modeling effort, the tool we use is called GenX. And as I said, it is an open source software model. You can think of it as having 3 different models within it. The first is a capacity expansion model that looks at the transmission system in California and going out into the Western United States and what transmission lines are there, what different power plants exist, and what would happen if we put more power plants on the system in different places. How would the system, how could it or would it operate if additional power plants were added in different places? The next model is a production cost model, and it simulates an hourly economic dispatch of all of the current and hypothetical future power plants in California and in the Western United States that feed into California. And this shows what the costs of our portfolio would be on an hourly basis going out 20 years into the future under different hypothetical modeling scenarios. So like if there's an extreme drought that lasts for 10 years, that would be one modeling scenario that we would want to look at. What if natural gas prices go up very high and stay high for a number of years? That would be a modeling scenario we would want to look at. What would the production cost model and our associated costs look like if natural gas prices came down very low and stayed that way for 5-ish years? What would be the cost of our portfolio and how would the system operate economically based on that situation. So those are the types of scenarios that we will run and that we will evaluate the costs of our portfolio associated with using the production cost model. And then the last is the portfolio expansion model. At a high level, the portfolio expansion model looks at our current portfolio of resources and asks the question, if we add this one resource or a few different resources into our current portfolio, how does that change our current portfolio? Do we do better? Do we do worse? Again, under different modeling scenarios. Okay, next slide, please. The CPUC will require that we use, as I've mentioned, the CPUC requires that we use certain mandated input assumptions. When I drafted these slides, before Friday, before a key update was released by the CPUC. And so at the time that I was drafting the slides, I expected that the CPUC would require that we do two different scenarios for modeling. One would assume a statewide goal of 30 million metric tons of carbon on the grid by 2040, and another one that would require 25 million metric tons. Because the CPUC has just released a description of the required input assumptions, I have not been able to go through that description yet in fine detail, but it is possible that the 30 million metric and 25 million metric tons of carbon assumption, that might change in what we are being required to analyze, but there will be some required assumption associated with how many metric tons of carbon will be on the grid in its entirety by 2040. And even though AVA will have a zero carbon portfolio in 2030, our portfolio will not be zero carbon in every hour of the day. We'll be zero carbon on a net annual basis. And so for the purposes of modeling what our exposure to grid carbons will be, we do need to know what the CPUC's idea of total grid emissions will be to perform our analysis. In the production cost model, I kind of described this in the previous slide, we'll do different scenario analyses looking at things like hydro conditions and different high or low natural gas prices. And for the portfolio expansion model, we will be assuming that AVA's service territory is not exactly what it is today, but what it will be in a little bit later this year when unincorporated San Joaquin County will be an active member in AVA's service territory. Excuse me, I'm fighting a sneeze. We are not modeling any assumptions related to service territory expansion at this time. Next slide, please. I mentioned a few minutes ago that previous IRP analyses have resulted in procurement mandates from the CPUC. So in 2019, 2021, and 2023, the CPUC did release rather prescriptive procurement orders for all of its jurisdictional load serving entities. And we actually just got another procurement order requiring that AVA and all other jurisdictional entities enter into new contracts for new steel in ground generation resources. The 2026 procurement order is not quite as narrow in the procurement requirements as previous procurement orders were, but it is worth being aware that the more the CPUC mandates that we procure and the more specific they are about their mandates, the less choice we have to choose our own types of resources or choose our own resources that we contract with. So here's a hypothetical example. If the Public Utilities Commission mandated that AVA and its other load serving entities enter into contract for biomass resources, well, biomass resources carry carbon emissions. And so that is the type of procurement mandate that if we were forced to fulfill that obligation, we would not be able to say that we have a zero carbon portfolio because the mandated procurement resource would carry emissions associated with it. So very important to be aware that the the analysis that we do does have real world procurement consequences. Next slide. And then finally, what does AVA get out of all of this? On the bottom right, you can see an example of a portfolio build out. This was from our 2022 IRP compliance filing, and it shows the conforming portfolio and how we estimated that if we were to contract or attempt to contract with the conforming portfolio of resources over time, what types of resources and what volumes of those resources would be added to our portfolio over time. So, from 2024, having roughly 2,000 megawatts of solar to and only a little bit of offshore wind out to 2035, when we were thinking that we might be able to have considerably more offshore wind and similar volumes of solar in our portfolio. So this is the type of portfolio build out that we'll be able to demonstrate when we come back to you with our compliance analysis. The important thing to realize associated with this, well, first of all, two important things. Number one, the conforming portfolio is not necessarily what we intend to do or what we aspire to do. Even a preferred portfolio might not really be exactly what AVA staff wants to do, because the input assumptions that we have to use are sort of so restrictive. AVA will do additional analyses over time to inform our future procurement decision-making, and such that we can come back to the board and say, based on the additional analysis that we've done at this point in time, here's a snapshot of the type of portfolio that we actually think that we want to contract with. Here's how it's similar to the CPUC filing. Here's how it's different. But if the CPUC assumptions are sort of too far away from what staff thinks is realistic, we will let you know, and we'll be very clear that we don't think that the results of the analysis of the compliance analysis are a real representative of what we'll do in the future. Even for the AVA specific analysis, it is important to understand that it's a high level guide. It is not a step-by-step plan for procurement. So let me use offshore wind as an example. Back in 2022, when we did this analysis, the CPUC and other California entities thought that there was going to be a lot of offshore wind available to California by 2030 and by 2035. There will not be any meaningful volume of offshore wind available in the state of California by 2030. It will not happen on that timeline. Maybe it will happen in the future, but if we sought to contract with offshore wind based on the results of an IRP analysis, there wouldn't be the resource there for us to contract with. So the IRP, this type of analysis that we do nowadays, is an idea of what we might want to do if conditions are as we model. So if the cost of solar is what we model, then it would make sense to contract with more solar. If offshore wind is available and the prices are within a certain range, then it would make sense to add that resource to our portfolio. It is not a promise that we will contract with any specific resource type. It is an indication that if market conditions are what we model, then that resource type would be valuable. And I think that's the end of the slides.
Thank you so much. That was very informative presentation, and our CEO would like to make a comment.
Yeah, I just want to highlight a couple things there for emphasis. First of all, Marie mentioned that we as staff have taken on more of these capabilities, developed some of the competencies there. So big kudos to Marie and team, because that is a very robust undertaking to do this type of analysis. There's a reason this filing is every 2 years, and the last one was delayed/canceled, is because it is a multi-year effort, both for the CPUC to develop the assumptions and forecast what load is throughout California to provide that to load serving entities. And then it is a very significant undertaking for load serving entities to take that, ingest it, model it, do variations of that modeling. So it is a significant undertaking, and I think it's a reflection of good investment of staff time and resources working with consultants to enhance the open source modeling, take that on, get trained up on it, and develop those competencies. And I think that will pay off in the long run in terms of our ability to continue to enhance our modeling of long-term resource contracting and answer some of the questions that our board has asked, such as, what is the risk of hitting our 2030 zero emissions goal on an annual basis? What does it look like to be 24/7 zero emissions, and what are the challenges there? What would a portfolio look like just on a least cost portfolio with different types of constraints and objectives? So those are all critical things that we want to continue to analyze that are separate from the IRP compliance filing that I think we'll continue to work on, of course, and it takes time to do that. And of course, we will bring that in front of the board probably over the course of the year and beyond to continue to evaluate that and cost, because in addition to needing to do that work, clearly every few years, these assumptions do change significantly. And we're in a state right now where there's a high degree of uncertainty and variability on a lot of those assumptions that are used in terms of how much data center load will there be in the state of California? What is natural gas pricing? All of these things that you have to make assumptions on, and inevitably in another year, it's going to wildly change in terms of those projections. So I just wanted to highlight that and also sort of speak a little bit on the horizon of some of the analysis that we'll be doing here in the coming months and bringing that forward to the board.
Great.
Oh, and then one last thing, sorry.
Yes.
I did also just want to highlight, assuming that the deadline for this finally doesn't change, we can anticipate bringing forward this item back to the board for review and approval. One thing that would be useful perhaps for the discussion is just a little bit of feedback to the extent the board wants an ad hoc committee, or if they would like additional review of this type of material. It's dry, it's complicated, it is important. Our typical process is to review this as we did tonight, and then review analysis and outputs of the actual filing when it's time to actually submit. That's what we've done historically. As you have pointed out, most of this board has turned over since our last filing, which was in 2022. So this is new territory. So it's always useful to get feedback on the additional review or analysis that you may want to see and engage with staff on.
Okay. All right. We're going to go ahead and start with questions. And by way of reminder, if you have 5 questions, I'm just going to ask you to limit it to 2, kind of the first round, and then we'll circle back around again if no one else has asked your burning question. I'm actually going to start right now with the CAC chair. Do you have any questions at this time? No questions. Okay. So I'm turning to my colleagues in the room. Any questions about this information? Member Roche.
Thank you. Thank you, Marie. At this obviously very dense information, right? Maybe it's the second time I've seen it, right? So did you say it's a 10-year? So each 2-year cycle, you sort of update a 10-year forecast. Is that what that I heard?
Goes out 20 years.
Oh,
But
20 years, okay.
the procurement decision-making is focused on the procurement guidance, I should say, is focused on the upcoming 10 years.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's almost like an educated fortune telling, is it right? Because you don't know what the technology is going to bring. And then I wanted to ask, I'm glad you brought up data centers, because obviously in Hayward, this is an issue for us, that, there's this huge load. I understand there's data centers all over that don't quite have the energy that they need. So how you forecast that for what we're going to have to sort of produce for, or, provide for these data centers. But also, I'm hearing more a lot of these corporations are investing in these small scale nuclear facility, reactors. And is that something that would be a 10 to 20 year focus? And if that happened, would that then sort of be a reduction in what we would need to provide in the future? Just curious.
So
Can't hear you somehow, Marie.
Yeah. Marie, you're no, you're sounding very far away.
know what to tell you there.
There you go.
Can
Okay,
you hear
you're
me
back.
now? Oh,
You're back,
that's-
yes.
Okay, that's strange. There is a pretty astronomical forecast for data center demand growth in Ava's service territory going out to about 2040. In 2020, from 2027 to 2029, our demand growth is forecasted to grow 20% year over year, just in those 3 years. So most immediately, I'm very curious to see what happens in the 2027 to 2029 timeframe. But there is a state-approved forecast for demand growth that goes out to 2040. It's called the IPER. It's produced by the California Energy Commission, IEPR, that stands for Integrated Energy Policy Report. And at a high level, this is not a perfectly accurate description. The IPER produces 3 forecasts. I think of them as high, medium, and low. But one of those forecasts estimates that AVA's demand will grow to over 19 terawatts per year, whereas we're currently around 8. So really astronomical potential demand growth. We do not want to make procurement decisions based on a 19 terawatt demand forecast. As I said, the 27 to 29 timeframe is like the beginning of sort of hockey stick like demand growth in California and in our service territories specifically. And we will be procuring as we need to meet demand that is mature and that is actually going to be realized. We did recently add a new role to the Power Resources team, a director of strategic load, and that person carries a ton of data center experience. Ariel Romero Cox came to us from Silicon Valley Power. She has a lot of experience working with the data center customers already, and she is digging into the applications for interconnection in our service territory to find out what's real and what's not real. And we will be very actively managing that so that we know what's real and what's not real. And then we can push back on unrealistic demand forecasts. As for small scale nuclear, to build a nuclear power plant, even a small scale nuclear power plant anywhere, but definitely in California will require significant permitting hurdles. I think it is unlikely that we see small scale nuclear power plants in California in the next 5 years. And there would have to be pretty considerable permitting reform to enable those resources beyond the 5-year timeline.
Great. Thank you. That was very informative. Appreciate it. And at some point I would love to talk to Ariel just because, we are dealing with several of them now in Hayward. So thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, great questions, great answers. Any other questions here in the room at this time? Yes, Member Sakakihara.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank Marie and Howard for the report. And also, I think when this comes back to us in a few months, it would be great to kind of have the refresher that's not just, hey, here's the slide deck from a few months ago, but here's the key, because I heard multiple times, it's important to note this when you're looking at the proposal in a few months. And it's like, we're not going to remember that in a few months, so we'll just need the refresher. But I really appreciate the context.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair, questions?
Yeah, so question with respect to the terminology that there's a compliance report. Is it just compliance in that we need to file it? Or will they be evaluating and saying, this report's not, or this submission's not very good? Help me understand. If it's balanced and we're done? Or is it much more nuanced?
Don't get graded for our work. We do not get graded for our work product. It is possible that they could tell us, this is incomplete. One of the worksheets is incomplete. The workbooks that we have to fill out actually have so many macros in them, and there are oftentimes bugs in them and things that break. So it is quite likely that we will hand in something with a broken macro, and the CPUC will return it to us and say, oh, this actually has to be fixed. We realize the macro is broken. Please tweak this. Please change that. So that type of thing definitely does happen. I suppose it is possible that if we did a really bad job that we could be absconded for a poor quality work product. That we've never done that. And there's no fine or penalty, but we could be publicly absconded.
There also are, historically, there are certain questions or paragraphs that they may go back to a handful of load serving entities, say, can you please enhance or elaborate on this and clarify what you need or make this paragraph a little bit more robust? But it's not as if it's sort of like, oh, you're no longer in compliance because of that. Yeah.
Okay, I do not see any other questions here in the room at this time. Any questions, please raise your hand for our members online. Seeing no questions, we're now going to take a break from the members and turn to public comment. Do we have any public comment in the room?
There's no hands raised.
Do you have any public comment online?
Yes. Jim Lutz, you recognize for 2 minutes.
I don't think I'll take that long, and Mickey may say this anyways, but at CAC, there was very strong appreciation for Ava bringing these sorts of analyses in-house, and we wanted to support that and applaud that. And that's my comment.
There are no further hands raised at this time.
Okay, and I'm looking at Zoom. I see no hands raised there, so I'm assuming no public comment at our remote sites. So public comment is now closed. This is an informational item. However, I do want to take a moment and ask our CAC chair if she has any comments she'd like to share with us on this item.
Thank you, Chair. Jim did steal my thunder, and we did really appreciate that the IRP has been brought in-house, and I think that will benefit Ava tremendously in both forecasting and other analyses. And we had some questions about how the PCIA is going to affect the IRP. And again, we were earlier question, the data center will affect the demand for Ava, which was mentioned that it will more than double by 2040. And we would really encourage Ava, and the CIC will be happy to stand along with anybody, staff or the board, to fight for legislation around data center energy demand to deter the imminent, and I want to emphasize, imminent detrimental impact to our current customers. And if done with prudence, we may also have some opportunities to partner with potential customers in the data center world, offering expertise on how to build clean energy futures and stay away from fossil fuels. So how, data centers are not experts in energy, and perhaps Ava can step in and fill those gaps. So those are two things that we wanted to mention.
Great, thank you so much for that feedback. At this point in time, do we have any members who have any comments they would like to share? Member Balch.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So appreciate the presentation as stated by my fellow members, and I appreciate Member Roche's questions. My comment is simply, I think that it is new to me. I haven't seen it before in my tenure here. So to that end, I'll just lend that I think the full board should probably do it. Maybe one of the subcommittees takes on the legwork, but I would probably vet it that way, or at least I'm leaning that way. I would like to see some, and I can take it offline with staff, but what are the inputs that are the significant drivers of the outcome, for example, and what's the sensitivity around each of them? We talk about this all the time. I know you do that work internally, but what are the big drivers? 19 versus 8 for data centers would be a huge factor. And I think what caught my attention is if we go a certain way and then that takes away our clean energy procurement targets because we have to do biomass as an example, I think the board should be very aware of that, right? And that's not staff's lack of performance with the board policies. That's maybe just the reality. And so I just want to make sure I understood better what decision points lead to that outcome versus the overall objectives of AVA. So I'll leave it there and maybe add to the mix.
Member Marquez, did you?
Yeah, I definitely think this is a tense topic, even though I've heard it. This is a good refresher, but I really like the approach of ad hoc committee. And then obviously there'll be other touch points bringing it back to the full board. But since the majority of our board is newer, I think that would be extremely valuable to allow those that want. I'm not going to, obviously it's by
your willingness to volunteer because it's an additional commitment. But I do feel strongly this needs dedicated time and space to work through.
Okay, thank you for sharing those comments. I'm turning to our members online. Do you have any comments at this time about this informational item? I do not see any hands raised. So the only thing I would add is, I'm sort of incredulous that they're asking us to model 20 years ahead. That, right? I mean, that just seems like make believe, but with that said, I do also appreciate that we're going to be doing the modeling in-house. So when these assumptions do change in 6 months, in 18 months, that we have the ability to input that data into our own models and use that to help guide us as we go forward. So I do very much appreciate that. I know it's a ton of work for our incredibly capable staff. So I just want to give a shout out to Marie and her team. And this is an informational item only. So unless there are any other comments that I've missed, we are going to go ahead and close.
Chair,
Yes.
if I may, I
Yes,
think
yes,
staff does need direction on if it's going to be ad hoc versus full board. I don't mind it now that I heard Member Marquez saying an ad hoc might be the way. And so it sounded like maybe there's a recommendation that staff solicit the board to see who would like to serve on that and then go from there.
Absolutely. And if no
Thank you.
one is interested in serving, that's
Executive
our
committee.
answer.
Then it goes to the executive.
I think regardless, we will make sure that there is, depending on the timing of the analysis and, what there is of interest then versus perhaps subsequent follow-ups that are non-compliance, submission oriented, we will absolutely bring it back in front of subcommittees or full boards and do some outreach to the ad hoc
Touch
as well.
points.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
is that-
if
is that
you'll,
clear?
can you hear me? Sorry
Yes,
about that.
Yes, yes. go
If you'll
ahead.
just excuse me, I do have to note, we are required to bring the compliance filing to the full board
Yes.
for
Yeah.
approval.
Yeah,
So
we're
just,
clear on that.
okay, just want to be clear on that point.
Yeah.
It's the earlier touch point. for
And
those
I
that-
think that's what we're trying to say is that the building of it out, the build out of it, the touch points along the way, I think we can leave that to staff, ad hoc committee, but maybe there's a couple of logical steps to touch point.
Okay, is that enough direction for
Yes.
staff? Okay, thank you so much, Marie. Thank you very much. We are closing out that agenda item number 8, and we are moving to our next agenda item number 9, which is also an informational item. It is update on changes to 2026 customer bills, and it will be presented by Annie Henderson, our Chief Customer Officer. Welcome.
All right, good evening. I'm going to come up here. It feels a bit formal, but I was sitting in a black hole from the camera. So for those online, hello, this feels less like a disembodied voice speaking to you. But Adrian, thank you for bringing up the memo. This is a fairly concise, brief update, but we did want to bring this back to the board because there were some changes from the forecast that we just presented in December as part of the financial adjustments presentation. And this is due to a late December filing with the final rates for January 2026. So this is really intended to communicate those updates to the board, to our CAC, and our most engaged stakeholders, and does not necessarily represent how we will frame this to the general public or to our customers, which is sort of addressed through various tactics in the last section of this memo. So I'll just start out with the January 2026 update. So the ERA filing that we used in providing the forecast in just the previous month in December 2025 differed from the final rates or the AET filing. So as a result, we had previously forecasted a total bill, meaning our portion for generation as well as PG&E's delivery charges, was forecasted to come down for the average residential customer by about 11%. Based on these final numbers, we expect it to be about 5%. So we wanted to make sure that we provided that update publicly to all the various stakeholders, but also to highlight the fact that AVA is still, for our portion, the generation portion, we're still bringing down what we're charging to our customers by anywhere from 15% to 21%, the differential being which service you're on, Renewable 100 versus Bright Choice service. So we are still bringing down our rates by upwards of 21%, but because of the combination of the various bill components, the total reduction in the bill that will be experienced by a customer who most likely does not distinguish between those two portions is about 5%. And that's on average. So it's a bit of a wash, unfortunately. But we do have some other updates that we wanted to share if we want to scroll down. Again, in December, as part of the financial adjustments to address a deficit projected for calendar year 2026, the board made the decision to change the Bright Choice discount and the Renewable 100 premium. We just wanted to state that staff has taken the necessary actions to implement those things. There is a small nuance in this. The rates are effective January 1, but because of the way that we receive data from PG&E, we cannot apply this to a customer's bill until after their billing cycle starts. So anything that a billing cycle that started before January 1 is still going to be billed on AVA's previous rates. And so we just wanted to make that clear that most of our customers will see these new AVA rates on the bill that they will receive in early February. And then second to last is a charge that is upcoming. It will be on the PG&E portion of the bill. It is related to delivery charges. It's called base services charge. Almost 2 years ago, we brought this to the board, April 2024, and there is a link provided in the memo. And at that time, this was part of Assembly Bill 1999, and it was referred to as income graduated fixed charge. So the new customer facing actual implementation name is base services charge. So it's a fixed monthly fee for residential customers, with the idea that there is a small decrease in the delivery charge as well. And this will start appearing on customers' bills in March. So most residential customers are going to pay a fixed $24 per month fee. And then our care customers will only pay $6. FARA customers and those individuals that are living in subsidized or affordable housing will pay $12 a month as the fixed fee. And there is a lot of messaging being put out by PG&E as direct emails to customers. So we have certainly noticed that. You may have local residents reaching out to you. So we wanted to give you a heads up on this. If we scroll a little bit further down, wanted to just share a graphic that was part of the email showing how for the sort of standard residential charge of $24, how that impacts different customers based on their usage. So because this is a flat fixed fee per month, the more kilowatt hours an individual uses, it means you can spread that out. That fixed fee gets spread out and therefore is proportionally a smaller number per kilowatt hour. So this does benefit higher usage customers. I think this will be beneficial for maybe some of our customers that have a higher air conditioning load in the summer, but where you're in sort of a moderate climate and that 450 kWh is more in line with what has been our average residential load across our service territory. You can see that there is a small uptick in sort of estimated bills for residential customers. And if you scroll down a little bit further, I think the last section that we have is the customer education around all of these changes. So there's a lot coming at customers right now regarding bills, regarding affordability. So we do want to make sure that those customers who are looking for information have sort of the varying levels that they might be looking for. So on our website content, we will provide more descriptive, in-depth information for those who are looking for it via what we call our insights. These are sort of articles that are more timely and up to date. And then, of course, the Understanding Your Bill, which is more kind of step-by-step walking someone through how to read their bill. We have our newsletter coming out on Monday, which will have an article about bill changes and rate updates. We'll be doing digital social media and paid ads, as well as a reel on Understanding Your Bill. And we will be providing talking points to our call center, as well as to our board members, so that you have something on hand should you want to respond directly but you can always reach out to us as staff. And I also will reiterate that our call center is in fact very well versed in these things, and they do a great job walking customers through their bill because they're able to pull that up directly and reference, that customer's specific usage and their specific bill. And with that, that is the end of the memo.
Okay, thank you for that informational presentation. I don't, if just pausing to see if our CEO has anything to add. If not, we'll go straight into questions.
The only thing I'll add is this is obviously related to general education awareness, to sort of unpack the different complexities of the bill. And these changes obviously on different parts of the bill, generation and delivery. So that's the intention of this. I just wanted to note that in February, we're also going to provide a mid-year budget update to the board for review, which integrates all of the board actions that we took in December, the final rates that Annie has referred to here, so we can update the fiscal year budget forecast so the board can see that. That's a little bit related to how numbers actualize here. So I just wanted to note that.
Okay, we're going to turn to member questions at this time, and I am going to mix it up and look at our members on the Zoom. And I see that member Trey Goob has his hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the presentation. I apologize. I just noticed this in the staff report, and I wish I'd noticed it sooner, so I would have reached out sooner. I have a somewhat nitpicky question around it. Is it your understanding that it was AB 1999 that created the income graduated fixed charge versus AB 205? My recollection is AB 1999 did not pass, but would have actually put a $10 a month cap. Full disclosure, something that I supported and advocated for. But my real question is, I appreciate your calling out what the impacts of this would be for customers of different home or unit sizes. I'm curious if there is any analysis about bill impacts like non-care and FARA impacts based on income as a result of the income graduated fixed charge implementation.
All right, so you caught me. I did not ask our public policy team to vet my reference to the Assembly bill. I did look back at the April 2024 presentation, and at that time it was Assembly Bill 1999 that we were sort of responding to in the analysis that we performed. So it may be that this sort of moved along and I didn't reference the final bill. Apologies for that.
Annie, I can confirm it is
okay.
AB 205. So that it's a
Thank
good
you.
catch, and sometimes the bill numbers evolve. So yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I would recommend, or what I can point to right away is that in the link in the memo to the April 2024 presentation to the board, our public policy staff did a very robust and very impressive analysis of what the outcomes could be based on different customer segments and different income levels. And at that time, it was based on very, very similar fixed rates. It was, maybe a few cents off in different cases, like it was $24.12 rather than just $24. So I think it is a very good representative analysis. What we perhaps did not include in the analysis at that time, thank you, Adrian, was sort of a representative customer from San Joaquin County and some of our newer communities, which do tend to have a higher average monthly usage. This is something that was done by our policy team and was in fact, they sought and had meetings with various legislative members as well as their staff to try and share what we saw was maybe some of the unintended impact of the income graduated fixed charge. but this is what was passed by the legislature and is now being implemented. I don't think we currently have any plans to go back and do a reassessment, but certainly as it becomes part of the bill, we can be looking forward to see, based on real bill data, how an updated analysis might look.
Yeah, I'll just add, obviously, the intention of this communication simply state factually, this is a new structure of a fixed fee on the delivery charge that will be incorporated starting in March. There is, of course, a longer history of the legislative process and the debate that went years back to pass this. It was a heavily discussed, debated, scrutinized bill with strong opinions on both sides of that. And, Annie's reference to the analysis that our policy team did was both very robust and heavily used by the legislature to really help guide that discussion and perspectives on both sides. And it's a complicated issue, and intention was not to, of course, give a summary or unpack that issue all right now. That bill was passed. And so we're moving forward. But in very short summary, I'll just say that our analysis showed that there was a high degree of variation on impacts to particular customers, and it varied greatly. And the illustrative example that's provided there from PG&E itself on low energy use to high energy use customers is a good reflection of where you can see some of those dynamics of those that would benefit and those that would be hurt by this type of a fixed charge. And on average, given our relatively moderate temperatures and climate, AVA territory was generally a little bit worse off. But again, across our customer base, highly varied. And with our expansion further in San Joaquin County, as Annie noted, it probably would swing us more towards the average just in terms of overall impacts.
Okay. Any other questions from the members online at this time? Oh, yes, Member Fugazi. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was really excited to see this item on the agenda with the letter that came out from PG&E. My office continues to receive calls from residents who are confused, just straight up confused. We have requested those with CARE to send us theirs, those with solar, and then those with regular, as we do our best to try to walk them through. Because we've asked them to give us, previous bills from before AVA, with AVA. Some have left, just so we have a good grasp of it. And if I could just make a few recommendations on this, because, you do have the planned education piece to this, but that there is a clear side-by-side comparison of AVA and PG&E generation charges by customer class and tier. That includes CARE and non-CARE customers. And then a detailed explanation as to how the power charge indifference adjustment impacts AVA customers. Clarification of how CARE discounts are applied to AVA customers and why CARE participation does not necessarily prevent bill increases, because this one woman, hers went up to $619.19, and fortunately she had a child, well, not a child, but a son who helped her pay her bills. And then a plain language breakdown distinguishing generation charges from delivery charges, and then confirmation of whether AVA has customer facing, the educational promotional materials explaining those rates, which we just did, because we need to have, like I said, again, a consistent message. So if my office, if we can be involved in any of those, so we can better let customers know, because this is something that literally there is not a day that goes by that we don't receive a question about their bills. And I have a whole it's a affordability ad hoc where we're talking about things like energy, housing, food, all those kind of things, because people are really trying to make their dollar stretch. And I can see from some of their bills, they're paying 1 month and then they have to wait to pay, and they can only pay partial, and then they go into the next month, and I can see people starting to dig themselves into a hole, and we don't want that. So I'm more than happy to send over my recommendations and see how they might be able to fit in with what you're trying to do, but it will really help me with my constituents. You know, like I said, we're almost at 325,000 people, but you know, of course, we don't have 325,000 residences, but that's still a large number that we're trying to get with information that they understand in order to make informed decisions. So I'll just put that there.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to interpret that as a question to Annie to say, is this something that we can do? Can we come up with graphics and come up with more materials that clearly kind of show side by side PG&E versus AVA?
Yeah, so there is in fact a document on our rates page called the Joint Rate Comparison. And this is something that we produce with PG&E. It is, we are required to have this. There is a lag. It comes out roughly 60 days after rate changes, but it shows an average kWh cost for the generation, for delivery, for PCIA, tallies it up, and then for the average usage. And then this is unique to AVA customers, and it is by different rate schedule. So you have both commercial and various residential schedules. And so it compares that to the standard PG&E bill, a Bright Choice bill, and a Renewable 100 bill. So that is a PDF that is linked on our rates page called the Joint Rate Comparison.
And a follow up to the question, if I may, does it look like a bill? So you could actually hold your bill up to it and say, this is what it does not look like.
It does not, but we do have a page on the website called Understanding Your Bill, and there are images of the bill with arrows pointing to say, this is what this is. This is what that is. I will also say, I appreciate and respect that each of your offices are trying to directly manage these questions that you're receiving, but we do have an excellent call center. So even perhaps if the person is there in person, you can call together so that you don't feel like you're, moving them along. But our call center, they're really well informed, and they can pull up that customer's bill and be looking at it as you are looking at it and walk them through it. They are a fantastic resource.
Okay.
And I appreciate that. That's where I came up with the consistent, because we have done that. But we've gotten one set of information from one call center representative, and we've got another set of information from another call center individual. And that's why, I was so glad when we got rid of the $5 charge or whatever it was for those who want to go back to PG&E or whatnot. But consistency is the key, making sure that everybody is well versed and they are giving the exact same information, because I have 3 people in my office that will sometimes get 3 different answers. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm optimistic about this, and anything we can do to help support, and be on that call, we will, because we want to work smarter, not harder.
I love that. Thank you. Okay, the CEO wanted
Yeah,
to-
just one quick comment. Obviously, as stated, this memo is intended for our board to try to unpack and explain the complexity of this. We know it's complicated. This is not intended for customers. There's a lot to unpack here. So we are also developing, in addition to some of the links that are provided in this memo that customers certainly can directly reference, some talking points that we can provide to board members, because we want to also assist you in helping to facilitate easy dialogue and communication, knowing that you yourselves and your offices get direct inquiries from customers and want to unpack some of these issues. And sounding like there may be some feedback, feel free to respond to that as we provide some updated talking points and reference sources to let us know if you have other suggestions or ideas.
Great. Okay, I see Member Rickman has his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. How hard would it be I imagine we have a program to put on people's bill, hey, since you've been with AVA, you saved this amount of dollars, or posted how much you saved with AVA versus non-AVA customers. Is that something that's ever been thought of or to do, or can it be done?
Yeah.
Good question.
For a Bright Choice customer, we do have a specific line on their bill each month that says Bright Choice discount. So it very clearly shows them how much they're saving by being a Bright Choice customer. For the Renewable 100 customer, they don't have that, of course, because they're paying a small premium. we do not have the ability right now to do sort of a custom field on every single bill. We do have over 750,000 customers, so we are issuing a lot of bills over the course of a month. And we just don't have the technology in place to do like a custom field of that nature. We have done some customized email communications in the past, and we certainly highlight the aggregate total savings that have been delivered to our customers since the start of Ava Community Energy for Bright Choice customers, as well as bill credits, and then also our local investment.
All right, that explains. I appreciate it. And with all the stuff that we're talking about that was in this agendized item, but at the end of the day, Ava customers are still better off being Ava customers, saving money versus just being a straight PG&E, correct?
That is correct.
That's it. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. I don't see any other hands raised online, so I'm bringing it back to the room. Does our CAC chair have any questions at this time? No. Any members in the room have questions? Member Roche.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask, so since the overall impact changed from a decrease of 10% to 5%, does this change our deficit projection?
So I think we're going to provide that as part of the budget update. We're running those numbers. There's a lot of complexity there. There's a lot of different moving parts. So inevitably, this will impact our overall financial forecast.
Mm-hmm.
All numbers are going to actualize differently than we estimated for sure. The energy prices are already coming in differently than what we saw a month ago.
Yeah.
In addition to rates changes.
I know, I saw an article about it later and I thought, oh man, we made this change, but
so as a general matter, I will certainly set the expectation the numbers are going to actualize differently.
Okay.
I don't yet know, when you look at all of the various changes, how that will, net out in terms
Okay.
of an overall change. We'll provide some of that update certainly in the February timeframe, as I referenced with the budget, mid-year budget update.
Okay.
And some of that, quite frankly, with some of the variations that actually feed into 27 even. So
Sure.
there's more, we'll try to unpack it as much as we can, but also I just want to know at this time, I don't know exactly how it all nets out, but
Okay.
directionally that one, the issue itself of rates going down a little less is going to have some impacts.
yeah, I mean, I guess I'm wondering in the future, because it did, that's it double or, decreased by half, right? What the outcome was going to be, the decrease to customers. We made some significant changes to change our Bright Choice and our renewable energy premiums. And so, maybe looking back on it, I wonder, should that have been a caveat, as long as it stays what we're saying now and then in the future. So maybe in the future, I would like to say, okay, we're making these changes because we need to make a decision right now. But, if when this comes out, before the end of the year, we have a fallback to some position, because to sort of have made those changes because we have this drastic deficit projection, which was understandable at the time. And now sort of finding out maybe it won't be as drastic as we thought. I just, maybe in the future, we have a caveat of the timing.
I think that's great feedback. I think from a process standpoint, we've thought about, should we be doing that final action item in January as opposed to December when we have actual final rates?
Yeah.
Obviously, at the time, we were trying to be as proactive as possible,
Sure,
trying to
yeah.
utilize the full year as quickly as possible so we can put in place any changes. So those are all, and this is the first time we've done a value proposition change in the middle of a fiscal year.
Yeah.
And at the start of a calendar year, typically we do it on a fiscal year basis. So we sort of have that time to sort of adjust things. So all good feedback for us to take back and revisit the process. I will say, don't interpret the net change in the overall bill reduction from 10% to 5% to assume, we've now just cut our deficit.
No, I know, I
Yeah,
understand
that
that,
was
but I
part
assume
of
it's going to
those
be
impl-
something slightly less
Yeah,
than.
and there's a lot to impact it because delivery charges increased by more, PCI increased by more,
Mhm.
and rates also maybe reduced by a little less. So there's different pieces
Sure.
there, and it's different customer segments and different PCI vintages that we all still need to unpack and sort of model out.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I look forward to that unpacking. All right, thank you. Thanks.
Great. Thank you for the question. Any other questions in the room? Vice Chair.
So I got 3 questions. The first one focuses on that April 2024 presentation. So I pulled it up on my phone, saw the link. One of the stated benefits was equity, reduced energy burden for lower income customers. So I see that as that's the plan, that's the vision, that's the dream. But what I'm sensing is lower income customers, all else being equal, probably consume less energy. And what I see from the PG&E bill, they're actually paying more.
Is that based on the graphic that
On
we
the
showed, that
graphic.
colorful graphic?
Yes, and so
So-
I'm struggling to Like, how is it that this is supposed to deliver those benefits? And there's some assumptions in my question, but I'm struggling. If you know.
So I will just maybe one clarification, that graphic that we showed was for sort of a market rate residential customer. So that was the $24 fixed fee. For a care customer, that fee is only $6. So you should see some savings as a care customer. But I did not have a graphic for that one in particular.
So perhaps for the lowest income customers, that would work out, but maybe if you don't qualify for care,
Correct.
et cetera. Okay, so that was the first question.
Yeah,
Second
sorry,
question.
can I make a quick comment there? I wanted two things. One is I want to definitely make the disclaimer, this is not our bill that we
Certainly.
promoted. So, but that was some stated intention of bill authors there. But I did also want to point out that I don't think it's a fair assumption to assume that a low income customer is a low usage customer. That is something that's definitely been evaluated and is highly variable in terms of energy use as a correlation to income levels.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Second question. So one of the big complaints that I get, and I certainly heard Member Fugazi highlight this, electricity bills are out of control, right? Is it fair to assume, factually speaking, that today's electricity bills are materially higher than comparable bills 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yeah, I don't have this graph memorized, but we did show in the December presentation on the financial adjustments sort of where at least Ava's portion of the bill, where our rates have been. And so when you look back in the last 2 to 3 years, it was quite a bit higher than what we will be seeing in 2026.
I'm trying to really focus on the customer's bill,
Yeah.
not our portion.
Yeah.
Do you just happen to know offhand, is it factually true that customers are just paying a lot more for electricity now?
I think between last year and this year, they will roughly be flat. I think between last year and the prior year, we did see a significant increase
Okay.
Yeah.
due to a lot of charges on the delivery side of the bill.
Yeah, it depends on the time scale we're looking at. Over the last, say, 5 years, rates have increased and bills have increased as a result of rates increase. If you assume stable energy usage and nothing material has, changed that, I would say. In the last years, where I think there's a little bit more complexity there, clearly, obviously, as we just talked about, there's a little bit of reduction that we're seeing overall.
Okay. The third question relates to what we heard in December. I thought we heard that Ava's portion was going to be down by approximately 40%. And today I heard 15 to 21. And that caught me off guard because that's a big change in a month.
Yeah. So that 40% was in what Ava charges, and we were not speaking to the PCIA. That 15 to 20% includes our coverage of the PCIA.
Thank you. So it's not really apples to apples.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, we're going to turn to public comment on this informational item. Do we have any public comment in the room? I don't see any. Any public comment online on Zoom?
There are no hands raised this time.
Okay.
Oh, there is one hand raised.
Okay.
Jessica Tovar, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Jessica Tovar here. Just a quick comment. I do think it's a huge mistake if you're only doing outreach and education that is centered around rates and affordability. And just reading the bill, but not talking about the benefits of having a public not-for-profit community choice energy agency and the investments that the agency could do in our communities at a local level, and comparing that to PG&E. So I wanted to uplift that because the intent is not only to sell us electricity and clean electricity, but actually do local investments in clean energy and resilience and creating jobs, reducing pollution that improves our health, reducing the pollution that causes climate change on a global level, and actually builds wealth in our communities. If we're just talking in a silo about rates and affordability, we're actually losing out on what the whole point of community choice is. And so I wanted to uplift that because I do think that that is missing from this discourse. And it certainly is missing in the education of the benefits of community choice. Clean power to the people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Any other comments at this time?
Are there no further hands raised at this time?
Okay, I don't see any online either. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comment for this item, bring it back to our members. And I'm looking at the CAC chair to see if she has any comments on this item.
Well, I'll just bring forward what the CAC was discussed, and what we discussed was we're glad that Annie has a plan to express these bill changes to our customers. And this might be an opportunity for us to more clearly distinguish between PG&E charges versus the AVA charges. And also, I really want to highlight what Jessica just said about investing in the community and helping our constituents and our customers by programs and even energy efficiency. Being in the world of energy efficiency myself, I've walked into homes and had some changes done to homes, and they reduced their bill by 40% simply by adding insulation and improving their ducts and other various energy efficiency projects. So we don't ever want to lose track of how we can help our community.
Great, thank you for those comments. Any other comments? I'm looking online to see if we have any comments this time. Yes, member Traeger. Member from Berkeley, member Traeger. The member from Berkeley, can you hear us? Member Traeger?
Thank you.
There you are,
Thank
yes.
you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay. So I'm not going to relitigate AB, well, that whole income graduated fixed charge discussion. I will say in the analysis that I did at the time, we looked at the impact of again, AB 1999 was the bill that would have capped the fixed charge to $10. But in its CPUC filings, PG&E had some pretty steep, I mean, in some cases, over $100 a month fixed charge proposals. And that was concerning because in the modeling, we saw the cases of the single mother, whether she lived in an apartment unit in the Central Valley or in the East Bay, and her bill would have increased by hundreds of dollars because yeah, I know there are other opinions out there, but based on the analysis I have seen, this really disadvantages those who live in smaller units and disadvantages those that try to reduce their energy bill rates through investments in local renewable energy, distributed energy resources, and efficiency. That said, here we are. And I think it is going to be very important. And I know as a public agency, we have to do it in a dispassionate way. But to really make it clear to COO Cheng's point, we did not advocate for AB 205. We did not have any filings in the CPUC docket for high fixed charges. And here we are, and just really separating out I appreciated the link to the insight on how PG&E rate how PG&E rate changes impact AVA customers, which really separates out the one thing that AVA has control over, the generation rates, and then making it clear to others' point that under our baseline program that it is tiered to be less than PG&E, and then explaining that transmission and distribution, that is not our domain, that is the investor-owned utilities. I know it's going to be complex to put some of this excellent explanation into a bill that customers receive, but I do think it is important from a reputational perspective for AVA as a public agency to do that. And to the extent that that can be done in multiple languages. And again, there's going to be a tension. This is not simple, but it needs to be simply explained in a simple, easy to understand way. Going forward, I mean, one of the things that was the result of AB 1999 being held in committee is that PG&E can come back anytime during a proceeding and ask for a much higher fixed charge than what the CPUC has granted them. And there's nothing stopping the CPUC from granting that non-bypassable high fixed charge. And I am concerned about the implications for CCAs like AVA, both from a public policy perspective, but more so from an equity perspective for our customers. So, and providing that education as best as we can in a way that customers can understand, and within the limitations of what we can do in being dispassionate as a public agency, being clear about the areas of this bill that is within our locus of control and the many parts of this bill that are not. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do you have any other comments from our members online? Seeing none, do we have any comments here in the room before we close out this item? No? Vice Chair.
Okay, so Howard knows well, I feel very passionate about this item. The communication, I think, is very important. I believe that PG&E is out there telling a story that they have decreased their rates 4 times in the last 2 years. It is a story that implies to residential customers that their bills are getting lower. But everything that I hear from customers in San Leandro is the bills are getting higher. What they pay is up. And I'm a big believer in telling the truth, and anything that we can do to acknowledge the truth of what customers are experiencing is important. And anything to counteract a false impression that might be created by another agency, I don't think that's dispassionate. I think that's about telling the truth. And so I think that to me is very important, number one. Number two, I think that being painfully clear about AVA is working to lower your bill. What you pay AVA is down by 15%, by 21%. Our contribution to your bill is down. Even if your bill is up, we are working hard to lower your bill. That's factually true. Our contribution to their bill is down. And I think that we should stand proud about that. I think we should sing that from the mountaintops, shout it. And that's just fact. And I feel very strongly that in this world where there's spin, like, oh, we've lowered rates 4 times. I just think that we need to be very strong on what we're doing because we're backed by data. We are lowering people's bills for our portion. And so yeah, that's my public comment on that piece, because I feel like we need to be very bold here with the truth. We never exaggerate, but factually, the truth is on our side.
Thank you for those comments. Member Marquez? No, okay. Okay, great. Just nodding in agreement here with those comments. Appreciate those from our vice chair. This is not an action item, so if there's not anything else that staff needs from the board at this time, I'm going to go ahead and close out this item and move on to item number 10, which is an action item. And this is an item that I requested to be in front of the board this evening. So many of you will remember that the board used to meet at Cal State East Bay at their continuing education center at 1000 Broadway. The actual venue had a 10 p.m. cutoff. So because of that, we would start to wrap up our meetings kind of right around the 9 o'clock mark. Now that we're having our board meetings here in the AVA offices, we no longer have that time limitation. But I do think it's a good idea. It's a good practice to have a time limitation so that not only for meeting efficiency, but also for staff and for everybody involved in how we put together these complicated and very informative meetings. If we have a time limit, then we can prepare accordingly. So what you'll see in the staff report is the proposal that I talked to John Perkins about, who is our attorney here in-house at AVA. And the idea being that if we reach 9 o'clock and a substantive agenda item has not yet begun, that item would be either continued to the next regularly scheduled board meeting, or we could take a vote at that time of the members. And if a majority of the members want to proceed with that item, Adrian's looking at me, am I getting this right? If the majority of the members want to proceed with that item, then we would go ahead and take it up after 9 p.m. So those are my thoughts. And I was happy to find out that I think Pleasanton and San Leandro have similar procedures in place. I think the city of Piedmont has one as well. It's a lot later than 9. I think it's 11. I would not suggest that. So, okay. So anything that staff wants to add?
Nope, I think that captures it.
That captures it. Okay, great. All right. So we're going to go ahead and ask, are there any questions about this proposed policy at this time from any members in the room? Any questions from the CIC? Oh, go ahead. Yes, member.
I love it. First of all, if I could move it, I would right now. I know we're not at that stage, but my question is, would it just have to do with like distinguishing between action items and informational items? Like, if we're getting close to 9, that we move the action items like up in the at the agenda, so that
Yeah,
so that we're
it
not sort of
absolutely did help.
sacrificing a potential vote that needs to be occurring,
Correct. Yes.
over. Yeah.
Yes. And I do think, behind the scenes, I know Howard and staff really try to put time estimates on agenda items so that we are making sure that we do the most important. All of our issues are important.
Right.
All of our agenda.
But some need a vote, right? Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, if
Yeah.
it's an action item versus an informational item, then certainly, if we feel like we're going to run up against that deadline, we can shift around the priorities.
Although recognizing, I know some of the informational items are also sort of timely because they have to come before the next thing comes. So yeah, anyway, just wanted to make that comment. Otherwise, I love it.
Awesome. Any other questions? Okay, I'm turning to oh yes, member Barrientos.
Hi, I was wearing my third hat here.
Great.
When this is harkening back when I was in college, we did have a time limit, and it was good because it'll, push people to get item done on time and not to draw it out. Because some people nefariously will push an item forever. So, and I think it is simple majority or to extend or not.
I will look at John Perkins, who drafted the policy. Is this a simple majority vote could extend the meetings? Simple majority, yes. Okay, Great. Thank you for that. Looking at my colleagues on Zoom, any questions about this proposal? No questions. Okay. Let's do public comment. Do we have any public comment in the room, online, or at our satellite locations?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay. Any comments from the CIC? No. Okay. So at this stage, unless there are any comments, further comments by any members, we would entertain a motion. Member Roche, you had requested a motion.
Yes, I would like to move the item.
Thank you.
Second.
And a second from member Barrientos. So let's go ahead and vote. And remember, the way we're voting is the motioner and the second are going first. So we will do roll call. Please proceed.
Okay. Hayward,
Aye.
Livermore,
Aye.
Alameda County,
Aye.
Albany, Berkeley.
Did you say Berkeley?
Yes, Berkeley.
Aye.
Thank you. Dublin, Emeryville,
Aye.
Fremont,
Aye.
Lathrop, Livermore, Newark,
Aye.
Oakland,
Aye.
Pleasanton,
Aye.
San Joaquin County,
Yes.
Stockton,
Yes.
Tracy, Union City.
Aye.
Tracy, I just want to, okay, I'll come back to Tracy. San Leandro.
Aye.
And Piedmont.
Aye.
Motion is approved.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, we are moving on to agenda item number 11, which is board member and staff announcements, including requests to place items on future board of director meeting agendas. Looking around the room, I do not see any hands raised. Looking at Zoom, I do not see any. Looking at our CEO, any heads up on anything? Okay, not at this time. Great. So we're going to move to item number 12, which is adjournment. So we're going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 7:53. Our next meeting will be held on Wednesday, February 18th, 2026 at 6 p.m. Thank you.